Okay, so I will share with you, number one, on slide 3, you can skip to that one. You can know that something about collagen. Okay, so our liquid biocell product is based on this super molecule. Okay, I think it's the most important molecule you have in your body. Okay, and that's based on science. It is the building block, it's the structural building block of your entire connective tissue organ system. Blood vessels, tendons, ligaments, your bone framework, your connective tissue, your skin, your dermis, everything is made up of this amazing super molecule called collagen. Okay. And when we lose this, our skin becomes less firm, our hair and nails become weak. Our joints start to feel stiff. Anyone who feels discomfort between their joints, whether it's in your knees, hips, anywhere, toes, fingers, it's because that cartilage degrades over time. That cartilage is comprised of collagen. And when that degrades over time, that bone on bone contact is what causes the discomfort that you might be able to feel. And that's what makes us not being able to move or get up and down. And what's amazing is that children have an abundance of this component, right? So they're flexible. They can move around, they can do cartwheels, they can jump around, and they can, oh my God, I have an 8-year-old niece who I love to pieces. And we go to these trampoline places, we go roller skating, and she can like flip flop on all these things. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know I'm broken by the next day. But it's because she has an abundance of collagen. She has an abundance of hyaluronic acid, the sister molecule to collagen, which holds the moisture in between our skin cells. And you'll see on the next slide what is the really important aspect of our structural framework. So, Scott, if you can move to the next slide, I'll show you. Um, as we decline, all of this kind of declines in our body. So what happens is that there's a few different things. And by the way, I think women, we need more healthcare and support in healthcare system than anyone because we tend to have the brunt of it all, especially when it comes to collagen research or medical research. And one of the reasons is that so collagen declines as we age. Okay, it only grows because it is our strength of our body. So as we grow our body, when we're 5 to 20 years old, we have to build more tissue, so it increases over time, but then decreases after that. So after you have to stop growing, our bones or our tissues or anything like that, it starts to decline. HA also just HA is a sister molecule called hyaluronic acid. It's the moisture binding molecule to collagen. And it's in charge of all the suppleness that we have in our skin, our joints, our hydration, and everything else. What's interesting is that even though this starts to decline, what happens is that, for example, during menopause, we lose like 30% of our collagen during menopause. And so this is so important for everyone as they're aging. And the earlier you start, the better it is because you're actually building that structural framework over time to be stronger when it starts to decline for other hormonal reasons. And so it is amazing how important this molecule is. And until we came on board, no one could believe in the medical framework or the scientific substance of collagen supplements. And that's because in the past, these are, and you can go to the next slide, Scott. These are macromolecules. So what that means is that, and all of you know this as well, the kind of protein you take is important. It matters. Not every protein is alike. Not every protein supplement is like. Same thing with collagen. Collagen is a macromolecule. It weighs in the millions of daltons. And then and so one of our patented processes that we developed over these years is to move it down to a molecule size. It creates peptides that are absorbed very naturally and efficiently in our body. So here's the thing. Here's the kind of like, you know, people use this word biohack. I think it's a little overused and kind of weird right now, but I do think that one thing that you do need to know is what the whole biohacking kind of concept comes from, is how do you take control of your biology? How do you add to what's already happening and what's already available? Where do you get the edge? Where is the edge on what you can do for your body to make sure that you're healthy for the long term? We don't care about living until we're 200 years old, right? We just care about living until our natural life so that we can continue to move around and have a healthy life. We can continue to play with our grandkids, that we don't have to be dependent on anyone. We don't have to be in wheelchairs and things like that. And so you can take control of this now, and that starts now, no matter what age you are. And that is extremely important for everyone to know. So we can move to the next slide. What I will show you is that what we have built with the previous Modera line, which we have acquired now at Shackley, and I'm so proud to be here with the products that I developed. But I'm super excited about the fact that the sales of these products have proven everything. At Modera, for example, we had 90% consumer sales versus 10% of distributors who were buying the product. Our revenue came from mostly consumer sales. And I have not been in a room at a conference where I'm speaking or doing something where someone in the audience has said, "Oh my gosh, I use the liquid biocell." And these are not people who are participating in MLMs. They're not like old school Herbalife distributors or this or that or anything like that. These are just people every day who are using it, who have been using it. I go to conferences sometimes who I have seen people who have been on this product for 15 years on auto ship without any interjection of a compensation for it. No plan model being involved in it at all. And so my mission at Modera was to create a hybrid model which really showed the world that you can have something that creates real consumer value without any financial incentive to create a product that the proof in the pudding would be, does it create real consumer value? Because without the comp plan, would they still be purchasing it? Right? That's the true test about anyone in our space to actually prove, does this product actually provide real consumer value? Because if you don't have a comp plan attached to it, would it still sell at the same price at the same amount of quantity? Here's the great news. We have sold over a couple of $1 billion in just the time that I launched the product. And in the past 6, 7 years, in the liquid biocell line and the trim line and things like that. So has been a huge, tremendous success. And I take a lot of great pride in it. And the great thing is that the same active ingredient that you're talking about here with the liquid biocell product line actually works for other species too. But the only species it works for, the only 3 species that exist that have the same human cartilage as humans do, are dogs, cats, and horses. So we actually have the same product for equine, meaning like for horses. We have the same product for dogs and cats. And the only reason we came out with that is because uh, we had to, because people were starting to give the human product as it worked so well for them that they had to give it to their dogs and cats. And I'm a dog lover, by the way. Oh, my, like, how, and I have a child too, but like, I will tell you, like, our 4-legged friends are very different than our 2-legged ones. And so I just like, I understand how important our pets are and how important we want to make sure, how important it is that we want to make sure that we prolong their lives. So we can go to the next slide here now too. Let me just tell you this, how to understand liquid biocell. So there may be some confusion. Liquid biocell is the name of the ingredient, but it's also the name of the product. So sometimes we interchange the two. Liquid biocell is actually that ingredient that is a naturally occurring matrix of collagen, chondroitin sulfate, and hyaluronic acid. It's not a blend. Okay, we don't take hyaluronic acid from one source. We don't take HA and chondroitin sulfate from another source. In nature, where we derive this ingredient from, It actually is a naturally occurring matrix. And if you were to take a sliver, so let's just take this is a knee joint, for example. If we took your knee cartilage and put it under a microscope, you would see it would be about 60% collagen, 20% chondroitin sulfate, about 10% hyaluronic acid. It happens to be that our natural ingredient from the single source is the same composition of all of these three components in the same ratios. It's the only place in nature, to my knowledge or anyone else's knowledge, that actually exists in the same ratio as our own human articular cartilage. And why that's important is because the body recognizes certain things that you take in. So when you take this in, I think that the real mechanism of action here, although no one really knows, also no one really knows the mechanism of action for Tylenol, by the way. Most of the medications that are out in the market that have been the most successful, no one truly knows the actual mechanism of action in the human body. However, through experience, I think that the reason why our body takes so well to this product is because it's actually recognizing it in the human ratios that we have in our own human articular cartilage. And it's the only place in nature that exists that can provide these things. So if you go to the next slide, I want to show you some other things about this too. So I talked about how we take the molecule. Oh, by the way, these are big, huge molecules. So we had to discover a way how to get it to a size that was going to actually be absorbed, be bioavailable. We had to make sure that we were able to do so. If we go to the next slide, you'll see also we had to ask ourselves, especially after I came on board, what would be the way to take something so amazingly like scientific to the next level. So, for example, we have always been able to prove how important this ingredient was to elevate hyaluronic acid levels in your body by 6,000%. Why that's important is because HA is the moisture binding molecule in your body, in all of your cells, not just your skin, but in your joint, cartilage, all of those things. And so, can you imagine that, by the way? Like elevating your HA levels by 6,000% in a 28-day period. So once you start taking the product, one thing you'll notice is that, and by the way, I had lunch with a major influencer who has millions of followers online just last week on Friday. Um, and and she was talking about how important BioCell was to her because it was the only product that she was able to sell that actually created these kinds of benefits. She could actually see a difference by taking it regularly. And so did her whole consumer base. So there was no way that she could ever be separated from BioCell with what she did as an influencer to earn income. And so it has been amazing, life-changing, not just for people's health, but also from an income perspective, because people understand that if you have a product that really works, you can actually develop a real business out of it, right? And you know all of this. I'm preaching to the choir. You've seen this in live action in the past. Um, Dryness and scaling, for example, was depleted to almost nothing after taking the product for 12 weeks without using any topical moisturizers. So imagine human subjects being told, hey, come on in. We're going to give you this product. But one thing we ask you is you don't use any moisturizers or lotions for the next 12 weeks. How many of us would actually like agree to that, right? We'd be like, oh my God, no way. And I mean, I use oils on my skin and things like that. And like, who would come in there and be like, okay, all right, fine. There are clinical patients and they were told to do that. And their dryness and scaling went down to almost zero over a 12-week period without any use of any topical moisturizers during that period of time. So does that mean you have to stop using moisturizers? No. It just means it's proof, which is that this shows you how important HA is to your body's own ability to hold on to moisture in your skin. So this has been remarkable too. And if we go on to the next slide, I'll show you some other examples as well. Hyaluronidase is the enzyme that constantly breaks down HA in your body. In a study, we saw that the more biosol you took, the more inhibition of hyaluronidase it created, which is great because it actually prevents the breakdown of HA in your body, but also increases HA in your body too. So it's got a dual, multiple compound effect. The other thing is, and we've done multiple human clinical trials on, subjects who had joint comfort issues, joint discomfort. In one study, 40% improvement from day 0 to week 8 on joint discomfort. In fact, we've measured it on all measures of the WOMAC scale. The WOMAC scale is the measurement that basically it's the Western Ontario, it's a Canadian measurement that doctors use all across basically North America and mostly the world on how to measure discomfort associated with like arthritis, for example. And all levels of that showed significant improvement on quality of life, activity level, improvement in every aspect. So it has been, so if any of you have any joint discomfort, if you have some stiffness and things like that, you have, by the way, I went roller skating for 5 hours with my 8-year-old niece, and the next day I was like, I'll never do that again. But I will tell you, thank goodness I did take Biosol for all these years because it was the reason I kept going for 5 hours. And I am of that age now where I cannot do those things. But thank goodness I had strong tissue. I had strong connective tissue that even if I fell down, like I was up and running again, right? That's what youth does to you. You know, youth gives you an abundance of collagen and HA, which helps you to get up, bounce back, be flexible. So we'll go to the next slide here, and I want to kind of transition into what we're doing with the new Life Plus product. And by the way, we are keeping the Liquid Biosol Pure. We're keeping Liquid Biosol Life. We're keeping, and we just launched the new Liquid Biosol Life Plus. And we were asking ourselves, like, how do we take something so amazing but make it even better? And so we thought about this and we thought, you know what, like, let's talk about the whole collagen framework. If we could like reinvent this and be able to help from 3 different aspects, protect, stimulate, and build, we thought of some other ingredients that could go into this to complement the active ingredient, Liquid Biosol, which is already doing all of the foundational work. But we added pine bark extract, for example, a powerful oxidative stress combatant, which actually helps because oxidative stress actually continues to break down collagen in our body. We added fucoidan, which is actually it comes from seaweed. And that is a powerful anti-inflammatory signaling ingredient that actually helps to help with anything that is countering that by accelerating breakdown of collagen, for example. We also have ingredients in here that will help with, for example, continue to like support collagen production, other cofactors as well. Biotin, for example, helps with keratin. And we have just the right amount of biotin in here too, not an excessive amount or anything like that. But it actually helps with like our hair, for example, and nails are built with keratin, which is biotin is supportive of. Zinc is another continued cofactor in collagen production. We also have another ingredient called calcium fructoborate, which is basically boron, right? So it's another vitamin that actually is really important in bone strength and density. It actually helps us to build our strength in our bones, right? So now we have an added benefit with this new Life Plus, which is to help bone density. Most important thing you can do as you age is to help your bone density. How do you help bone density, by the way? A few different ways. One thing I learned very early in my fitness days was weight-bearing exercises. So, for example, walking is better than bike riding, right? Because when you put on that weight on your bones, you actually strengthen that bone density. So you prevent things like osteoarthritis later on in life. You help to strengthen your body composition as well. So if you had 20 minutes, and by the way, I learned this very early from, someone I really respected, but if I had 20 minutes to exercise, what was the best thing for me to do? um, a weight-bearing exercise was the best way. So walking is better than like riding a bike, a stationary bike or something like that, because you're putting weight on your bones, which helps to strengthen them. So that's really important. Here's the other thing is that when you take something like calcium free that's actually helping with bone strength and density as well, because that ingredient boron actually helps to synthesize vitamin D. Vitamin D is very important in your bone marrow, bone density as well. So this is the new triplex technology that we've enhanced Liquid BioCell with, and now we have an amazing product, as well as the other ones that we have in the Liquid BioCell line to be able to bring to all of you. So let me stop here.